Okay, I think I got all that set up. So good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us again. Excuse me. Um, we are cruising right along with our classes. Next, we have about 4 more left after today. So next week will be Lynn Brandenberger talking about preparing for your fall garden. I'm going to be out of town next week, but I will make sure it still happens. So either Lynn can take over or I'll jump on and get it started from my little trip. So
You will host it from the airplane.
I think I'll be on the ground by then, so I'll be able to find if as long as I have access to the internet, I should be okay. So we'll go ahead and get started. And just a reminder for those who may have not joined us before, if you would put in the chat what county you are representing, I greatly appreciate that, so we can kind of keep track of that. And then we have the presentation, and after the presentation, we will have some time for questions and answers. Again, also keep yourself on mute during the presentation, and then at the end, again, if you want to ask questions either in the chat or by unmuting yourself and asking a question, that is fine. So today we have Ching Lu, who is one of our landscape architects in the Department of Horticulture and Landscape Architecture. I'm trying to remember how long you've been with us, Ching. Have you already been with us like 4 or 5 years?
5.5 years.
Wow, that's crazy. And Ching is actually is the first faculty member who is a landscape architect instructor, professor, but also has a small portion of extension appointment. So she helps us out well, that's part of her programming, is doing some extension work, and we greatly appreciate having her available to help us do that. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you, Ching. She's going to be identifying, or her topic is identifying weather-resistant hardscape materials for outdoor planters and elements. And if you want to go ahead and share your screen, I will go ahead and mute myself and let you go for it.
All right. Thank you for the introduction, David. Let me share the screen here. Full screen. All right. Can everybody see my screen?
Looks good.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you so much for joining me today for this presentation. And today I'm going to talk about hardscape materials for outdoor planters. So this is not a presentation about plants, and it's about the materials that you're going to make a planter, whether planter for ornamental plants or a planter for vegetables and crops. And so for those that we haven't met, my name is Ching Lu. My first name, as you see, it spells Q-I-N-G, and the letter Q pronounces C-H. So when you say my name, just pretend it's spelled as if it's a C-H-I-N-G. It's a Ching. I'm a landscape architecture faculty member at OSU. So as David mentioned, that I do have a small percentage of appointment of extension. As small as it is, I enjoy so much on the extension part, and I enjoy communicating, talking, exchanging information with the community, with master gardeners very, very much. I'm a licensed landscape architect. I used to practice as a designer in the industry, in design firms before 2015, before I became a educator, professor at OSU. So that's a very short introduction about myself. So today I particularly brought 5 types of materials that could be made into a planter, outdoor planter specifically. The first type of material is wood. And we're going to go into details a little bit into wood because in the past couple of years, I did get a lot of question about wood, what kind of wood that could be used for outdoor that is weather resistant, and that is safe for food if you are growing crops or vegetables. And I did see a lot of articles or YouTube videos, and the informations are all over the places, and some of the informations are inaccurate. So today we're going to talk about 5 materials, and then for wood, we're going to go into it a little bit more because just there's a lot of misconceptions in there. All right, so wood, as we all know that wood is used so commonly for outdoor planters, raised bed or ornamental planters, and so on. And we all know wood is so common. It's a global commodity, especially in the United States. We use a lot of solid wood to build stuff outdoors. And for outdoor applications, a lot of times we can use untreated wood, but it won't last long in outdoor scenarios. So most of the time we use treated wood with preservatives, of course, or we have to pick rot resistant wood that'll delay the rotting process. So let's talk about this treated wood first. And when we go to a big box store, Lowe's, Home Depots, and when we buy lumbers that could be used outdoor, and most time it's pressure treated lumber that we see that term a whole lot. And pressure treated lumber has been available in the world for about 60 years. And pressure treatment really means that, see the picture on the right hand side, people put the untreated wood in a huge channel or huge container, as you see, and then just vacuum shut the door and then vacuum the inside, and then inject chemicals under the pressure into the wood. And what kind of chemical? It's rot and insect resistant inhibiting chemicals into the wood. So, and then when you take out the wood, it becomes pressure treated lumber. So that basically, that's a very short story how it is done. The most common question I've seen or I've been asked, can home gardeners use pressure treated wood to construct a raised bed if I want to plant vegetables or crops, whether it's safe? So let's find out. So I'm going to give you a little bit history about how pressure treated wood was done in the history. So before 2004, so that was about 40, 50 years. And the very original pressure treated wood, so we know that we inject the chemicals into the wood, right, in order to make it treated, preserved. And the first original formula is CCA, so chromium, copper, arsenate. It has arsenic in it, which is very, very toxic to the soil, to the human being bodies, to animals, to the environment, and it causes the cancer. So for decades, people have been using this type of CCA treated wood for a long time until 2004. EPA eventually phased out this type of formula for residential use. So for industry use, such as railway ties, etc., still using CCA just because it preserves wood very, very well for a very long time. But for residential use, such as decks, such as playgrounds, etc., on a residential lot, it's phased out. And the next type of formula the EPA, so since 2004, EPA and the manufacturers, they found, let's talk about CCA. So if you have treated wood on your property that you knew that was from 2004 or before, don't use that to build your planters. And I know that a lot of you would love to reuse wood. Count me as one of them. But if it was from 2004, it's a treated wood. Most likely it's a CCA treated wood. Don't use it. Don't do planters with it, especially if you're growing food. Don't burn it. If you are handling it, wear masks, gloves, and protective clothing. And don't chip it as mulch and cover it in your planting bed. So don't use it as mulch. And if there's a sawdust, don't put the sawdust in the composting pile. And don't reuse them on your property, basically. So that's a CAA. And after 2004, EPA and a bunch of manufacturers, they started to look for new formula that could treat wood in a much, much safer way. And this formula is called ACQ. So alkaline copper quaternary. It is a non-arsenic based type of treated wood. So get rid of arsenic, which made it so much safer. But in order to still make it quite corrosive, not rot resistant, weather resistant, they added a lot more copper into it. And with the copper in the treated wood, so copper is the component that'll kill fungi, kill termite, etc. That is preserving the wood, right? But it comes with another problem. Just because of the high percentage in the treated wood of copper, whenever you put a metal fastener and the two metals are together, so one is the fastener as a metal, the other is the high percentage of copper in the wood, and the fastener became highly corrosive whenever it rains. So as the picture you see on the right, you see that hanger, that metal hanger for the wood deck, actually started to corrode very badly. So this results in this type of formula, ACQ formula, to have a very short popularity after CCA. And then manufacturers and EPA continue to look for more formula. So today, most of the time when we go to a big box store, Home Depot and Lowe's, whenever we see pressure treated wood, chances are it is CA treated wood. So it's a copper azyl formula. And this formula, and also there is MCQ, MCA formula, and chances are that they are much less corrosive than the QCA type of formula. And today when we go to the stores, and chances are that this is what you found. And I included a link here. So if we go to Lowe's website and directly, and as you can see, that this is a copper azyl, which is the CA type of formula, and this is how they treated the wood. And there is a CAB, CAC, that's type A, type B, type C, etc., and that indicating how much active medical that they have put into the formula in order to treat the wood. Another word is that how rot resistant that this wood could be. And usually when you buy pressure treated wood, you do need to read the description. For example, here, whenever I do something, I buy something, I like to look at the specifications of the products. And here it says, clearly says ground contact. Sometimes the pressure treated wood would say above contact, above ground, meaning that it's less rot resistant. For this one, it could be put in contact with the ground. And here it does say that suitable for burial or contact with the ground and freshwater immersion, etc. So this is a seriously treated wood, meaning that it has a very good quality to resist rotten. So back to my slides. So again, most likely today you found in store is a CA formula, pressure treated wood. And whenever you buy pressure treated wood, you need to read the description and find out whether it's above ground rating or ground contact rating. For example, if you buy the wood boards for your deck, for railing, that should be above ground rating plenty. But if you buying pressure treated wood for posts, etc., you need to find the rating that is ground contact rating. Okay, so basically there are two of these levels of ratings that you need to be clear of. Now, let's answer that very first question when I start talk about wood. So the question is, can homeowner use pressure treated wood to construct a raised bed without rendering the food crop unsafe for consumption? So the short answer for new modern pressure treated wood, the short answer is it's pretty safe. And this is not my conclusion. I did a lot of research online, and I brought to you 3 researchers' outcomes to you. So one was done by John Harrison, and he did evaluations on both CA, MCA, ACQ, formula treated wood, and his finding was so these 3 types are pretty safe for adults and children in terms of planting, plant grow and use in these containers or plants. And he expanded his finding that for most wood preservatives that contain copper, they are considerably relatively safer to use. And the second research I brought to you was from Oregon State University. So what this researcher found out is that there is low levels of chemical in the treated wood that would leach out into the soil, but they uptake the chemical that is taken by the plants are only in a very small amounts. And his findings showed that there is no evidence to suggest that the level of the chemicals is significant enough to be of concern for human health. His research did expand that. He did say that any modern commodity, any food container, say plastic food container, all of them actually has a level of toxicity in it. It's just we need to make sure that the level is not high enough that'll endanger human health. So this is the second research. So these 2 are very, very important research who seriously looked into pressure treated wood. And the third research, this Jeff Morrell, he did something really, really interesting. He did a comparison research. He did 2 exact planters, one with pressure treated wood. The formula was a CA, and the other is used untreated wood. And then he planted radishes, carrots, and potatoes in these 2 planters for 3 months for them to grow. So what he discovered is that the soil right next to the treated wood planter wall, there was the level of the copper was higher than the untreated planter. But the copper level in the plants in both planters, they do not differ from each other. So meaning that the plants did not take in much more copper in the treated planter. So these three are the most important, most serious research that people, there are some other people who done research as well. And these three showed basically they are pretty safe to use. But I do want to caution everybody. So if you still concerned, so sometimes I'm, often overly concerned if you have small kids, grandbabies, or you passionate about organic food, organic crops, there are extra steps that you could take so that you can have strong, long-lasting planters, but also plant very safe crops for yourself to use. So one thing you could do is if you use pressure treated wood for food related planter, you could plant your crops 1 foot away from the raised bed wall. So stay a distance from the wall. That being because the preservatives in the wood is unlikely to leach into the soil beyond 1 foot away. And also the second step, if you're still concerned, you could line the inside of the pressure treated wood wall with food safe plastic sheeting. That means really there is a impermeable liner barrier between the treated wood and your soil and your plant's roots so that you entirely separate them. Okay, so this is one way, but you have to buy food safe plastic sheeting, not any, say PVC plastic sheeting will not work. Another thing we should always know that the treated wood should not come in contact either directly or indirectly with the drinking water. So it can't be used as a drinking water reservoir or container, can't be used for a food container or animal feeder. And if you plant organic food, and USDA does not allow treated lumber for planting organic crops and vegetables. So we should know that. The two regulations USDA released in both 2011 and 2018 clearly stated that. So that's something that we should know. So this is wood, just because pressure treated wood, because there are a lot of questions and a lot of people are discussing about it. So here is what researchers have discovered. Okay. If you are planting, if you are super concerned or you're planting organic food, here there are more options that you could choose for wood planter. So that'll be natural wood species, and those are rot resistance and commonly seen wood materials that could be used for outdoor wood planters that are rot resistant are cedar, juniper, cypress, redwood, and we should pay attention that we should use the heartwood, not the sapwood. So sapwood is the outer perimeter of the tree trunks, and the heartwood is the inner core of a tree trunk. So the inner core part is called heartwood for those who are not familiar. And the heartwood part is really rot resistant. The sapwood is much less, let's put it that way. And some tropical woods, such as ipe, it spells IPE. It's a type of walnut tree from Brazil, Brazilian walnut. It has very hard, dense wood texture. It is very rot resistant. It's almost as rot resistant as a piece of concrete and as hard as a piece of stone sometimes. Can anyone recognize this bridge? It's in Oklahoma City. It's located in a newer park. So this is Scissortail Park. Scissortail Park, there's a long bridge on the west side of the property of the park. So basically all of the wood used on that bridge is Ipe wood. Okay, very, very expensive though. Okay, so that's naturally rot resistant wood if you don't want to use a pressure treated wood. If you don't grow crops, you know, you are not eating those vegetables. You can just use pressure treated wood or use cedar, etc. So these two planters, I built these in the early summer with cedar actually. These are actually just cedar fence boards. As you can see that my dog is taking a picture there. No, I'm kidding. It looks like the dog. So I was taking a picture outside. The dog is staring at me from inside the door. So it is natural rot resistant type of material. All right. So that is a wood. And as I said, wood is the one that we will look into it with more details. And now I'm going to go over several other type of modern planter materials for either ornamental or growing your vegetables. Okay. This first one, the next one is Corten Steel. So some of you might have heard of this term. So Cor-Ten actually is a trademark name. And Corten Steel, the nature of it is actually a type of weathering steel. As you see in the picture, it weathers into a beautiful, bright orange color. And if you touch it, your finger will get this orange color as well from it. Why they went after this name. So core really means corrosion resistant. Ten means tensile strength. So this type of planter is very heavy, very strong. It'll last for a long time. When you just bought it, if you look at this slide at the very first picture on top, this is its original color actually when you just install it. After several months, depending on how much rain you get on it, and it's gonna weather into a beautiful orange color. So this orange patina actually will continue to protect the planter from further corrosion. So that's why it's going to last for a very, very long time. Because it's so heavy, usually you choose a good location for it and then that's it. It's really hard to move it, to make it a portable. And it could be designed together with the seating spaces as this lower picture shows. And wherever you place it, you should also look at the surrounding area because this orange metal bleeding will get onto the surrounding neighbors, whether it's plants or your paving, etc. So you just need to make sure that your surrounding area, which could tolerate this metal bleeding. Okay, so this is a very modern type of material of steel that you could use as a planter for both vegetables and ornamental plants. Next, modern material is plastic. And they're on the market online in the nursery store and big box store. There's a huge selection of resin planters with so many different colors, unlimited colors basically, unlimited texture and unlimited designs. One thing I should stress is that whenever you choose your plastic planter, you should choose plastic number 2, 4, and 5. So 2 is HDPE, high density polyethylene. Number 4, low density polyethylene. Sometimes it's a 2, 4 blended mixed together. And number 5 is polypropylene. And the other plastic numbers, as you see there, in terms of plastic number, there are 7 of them, 1 all the way to 7. So do not choose the unsafe plastic numbers, including number 1, 3, 6, and number 7. Number 7 is a special one. Number 7, if it says it is the plastic, it is polycarbonate, it is not safe because that's the type of material, plastic material that has BPA in it. Especially when you plant plants that you want to eat, do not choose these ones. And also try to choose the plastic planter or box that is used recycled plastics, because that's an effort that we make to try to reduce the plastic that goes into landfill. This top picture shows that, see, this is a terracotta looking planter. It's actually a resin planter, plastic planter. And this one looks like a clay planter. It's actually plastic planter. So using these rule of thumb principles and try to use recycled plastic as your product, that'll be doing a good thing for the environment. So this is a plastic. Trying to see what time is it. Okay. Next, concrete. Concrete, as we know that it's much lower cost, although it's very, very heavy, and it is very long lasting. It usually has pretty thick walls, and these thick walls can provide benefits to the plants because it has this insulation, being a thick wall, to provide less temperature fluctuation in the soils. And usually it is somewhat not portable, and it is something that you can DIY. It's pretty DIY friendly, and then you can get a bag of cement or a bag of concrete, mixed concrete, at a very affordable price. And if you are interested in DIY, you can just look up online at YouTube. There are tons of people who are doing that. You can start from a small fixture like this one, a desktop fixture like this one. And it could be, so you can buy them online or from stores, and you can cast them in place, either do it by yourself or you can hire people to do it, as this lower picture shows. But once they are installed, they are there. So they are hardly portable. Even though these are not cast in place, they are very heavy to be moved around. Okay, but they will last for a long time and cost friendly. So this is concrete. Concrete can be dyed into different colors as well. It could be stamped with different textures, I should say. All of my picture examples didn't show that, but we should know that it has a lot of design potentials that you can put into. This one, so another type, modern type of planter. If you don't really care so much about the looking of the planters, say if you just want production, fabric planter, some of you might have used. I have used them before because I didn't have time to build my planter and I refused to buy the expensive ones from the stores. This area photo I showed on the top right corner, you see the backyard patio. There are some black dots. There are 7 of them with a dark shadow. Those are my these pot planters, fabric pot planters. So usually they're made of polypropylene materials. So polypropylene, again, is number 5 plastic, is the most heat resistant type of plastic as we know in 1 through 7 plastics. So here, number 5, PP, polypropylene. And usually it's a type of non-woven type of fabric made of polypropylene. And non-woven means that it's woved densely and not very stretchy. So when you put the soils in, your plants in, it could stay in that shape, upright shape pretty nicely. So this type of planter is really good for vegetables, for crops, only because the nature of the fabric allows the heat in the soil to escape from the planter itself. Other, versus the other type of planters, say concrete or plastic, it's entirely sealed, and this one is not. So if you don't want to invest time or spend the money on building the planter itself, and then you just care about production, you want to plant a lot of vegetables, and this is a really good option. And there are individual ones, as you see from the right hand side picture, and then there's a type that you can put them in a row, so a type of that several of them is actually produced all together, and the individual ones are somewhat portable, so they do have the ability to be moved around. So this is a fabric. So let's go back to the very beginning. So I did talk about wood, especially pressure treated wood, and showed you the researches that researchers have done about pressure treated wood. And we talked about naturally rot resistant wood. And then we start to talk about other modern planter materials. Corten steel is a type of steel that'll rust beautifully. We talked about plastic type of planters, and we need to pick the safe plastic numbers for that planter materials. Pick recycled plastic, that'll be the best. Use concrete if you don't move them around too often. We talked about fabric type of materials. Oklahoma City actually had a very, very famous brand type of fabric planter. They headquartered in Oklahoma City. That's what I had. That's what I bought for these. Plants just love it. So here are additional resources if you want to look into more about these materials. I included here as well. You feel free to ask me questions, either by chats or by voice.
Thanks, Ching.
Absolutely.
Any questions, anyone? While they're coming up with a few questions, I was kind of making a few notes as you were going along. One thing I remember, in talking about CCA treated lumber that's pretty much not available to the consumer anymore.
Yeah.
I answered those questions for 30 years, as long as I've been in this program, or in horticulture. And like you said, I even remember there were some studies even done with the earlier CCA treated wood, and one of the more common products that was used, of course, was railroad ties. And they have all kinds of fun stuff in them. But one thing that was noted, if I remember right, some of the research that was done with the earlier wood is, yes, there was arsenic found, in the soils, but again, it was typically not found to be greater in the crops that were being grown near it. So also remember that arsenic is found naturally in soils. So
yes.
Arsenic's there already. It's
yes.
just, of course, the level, or the concentration, or the amount that's there, of course, that is the concern. And I think the biggest concern really is just the handling of the wood, handling it, cutting it, breathing in that sawdust and all that kind of stuff. I really don't know that any studies show that there were actually any physical or health problems by growing food next to it. but it was more, I think, from the handling and the building and, you know, using
Direct
that type of wood.
contact.
So just a thought.
Yeah.
And then as you were talking about the fabric bags, I think, I could be wrong, but I think the grow bags is the brand name for one of the most popular ones, and it may be the first one that was created. And if I remember right, those were initially created for the nursery industry, growing trees in the grow bags, because it naturally did what we call air pruning of the roots when it reached the sides of the bags. And so you end up with a really nice fibrous root system within the bag that was then made easier to plant the trees, and they would actually get get established quite quickly and be healthier and stronger than other methods of production. So just a couple of trivial thoughts there.
Yeah, that's awesome. The nursery ones used was made of number 5 plastic as well, polypropylene. Do you know, David?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Okay, let's see.
Yeah, the one I bought actually is the OKC brand, and their website didn't disclose the specific materials, but they said their material is still under a patent. But I know that it has to be number 5 polypropylene, because that's the best weather heat resistant materials that will last long for outdoor.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, there are tons of other brands now. The OKC one has a really good brand. It sells a little more expensive, but they did use very nice materials.
Okay, let's look at some of those chat questions. Nanette asked if we could go to the last slide for the info. That will be, I mean, this is recorded, so you can go back and look at the presentation on the recording from Zoom, as well as the YouTube Facebook page. But if Ching wants to go back and throw that back up, that would be fine. While she's doing that,
okay,
we'll look at a couple more questions. How does galvanized steel do?
Okay, let me look at the chat window.
Yeah, I have to pull that back up again too. Okay, how does galvanized steel do? I would think the roots
in terms
would
of
get too hot, but maybe not. Well, any steel, of course, metal is going to get hot if the sun is beating directly on it, I would guess, right? But we have some steel containers that we use out at the gardens, and typically we have, you know, some very hot, warm season growing plants growing it, like succulents and yucca and things like that, and they don't seem to have any problem with it. So, any thoughts on that, Ching?
So thin sheet of metals, that'll just really, really easily to get the inside of the planter very hot.
We've used the corrugated metal panels out at the gardens to build raised beds. And they lasted for a long time, but eventually they started rusting and falling apart. So we had to replace them. And I think actually we went to steel, now that I think about it. Or did we? I can't remember. What's that? The patio garden. I think it's might be steel now that we used as sides for the raised bed in the patio garden. But anyway,
yeah,
and all the plants that we typically plant in those beds are succulents, so they don't mind, I guess, the heat that could be generated. I don't know.
Yeah. The Corten Steel, I showed that usually it's not a thin sheet of steel. It's pretty thick. Sometimes it could be as thick as your fingers thickness. And so that makes it very heavy, and that also makes it last forever. It's all welded together. It lasts forever. And then the orange patina, once it's weathered, will protect it from further corrosion. And we use it quite a lot in designing sculptures, designing screening walls and landscapes and parks. So actually originally was the very first project I seen 10 years ago, it was a sculpture using the Corten Steel. So now it's a lot more recognized by people and start to be made into planters, and residential homeowners start to use it as well.
Okay. Next question, Mickey, what is the average life expectancy of the non-woven polypropylene containers?
So it really depends on the brands. Some of them use a pretty thick, durable thickness for the fabric. It'll last for 10 years. The one place that'll break first is the seam, actually. So sometimes the roots or something will just break the seam open. So I need to resew it, but the fabric sheet, the fabric body itself, it's very doable. It's a very type of strong plastic.
Okay. Next question by Debbie. They have a polycarbonate food storage container. So is it a different kind of polycarbonate?
So Debbie, is your food container is labeled as number 7, or it just said polycarbonate? If it says polycarbonate, it has to tell you that it's a BPA free. Otherwise, it's a type of poisonous food container. It has to tell you that it's a BPA free. And polycarbonate is categorized as number 7 plastic.
Hope that answered that question. Let us know if it didn't, Debbie. Patrick, is hypertufa worth considering for planting edible and or perennials? Yes.
That's it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, you know, I think you can grow anything in a hypertufa, I guess. So as far as planting edibles and or perennials, I guess it would have to be big enough to be able to, you know, allow the plant to grow, you know, allow the plant to develop enough roots to develop into its full potential, I guess. It's going to be more porous, so it's, you know, the idea behind a hypertufa is that it allows oxygen to move in and out of the container more easily. So it'll have a tendency to probably dry out a lot faster, would be my guess. Typically we use, most of the time for hypertufas, we're often using it for, again, succulents, but I guess you can grow anything you want in them.
Yes, yes.
Okay, what should we look for when handling pallet wood?
2 springs ago, actually, I took my students, one of my construction class students, we tear apart pallet wood and designed and built some chairs. So from the very beginning, so when you take apart the pallet wood, it is very, very hard, actually, because there are tons of nails in it. And in general, the pallet wood materials are not the best wood materials. They're just very cheap pine wood board, usually very lightweight. And whatever you build, whether a chair or a outdoor furniture or site elements, you probably, once you finish building it, you probably need to find ways to seal it from the weather. Otherwise, it's going to rot pretty quickly. So what I took my students to do was to prime it with paint, prime with primer, and then painted with 2 coats of outdoor paints that entirely sealed them. One of the chairs that my student didn't use paint, they just use wood stain to stain them. And they stained part fell apart the soonest. And you need to sand them quite a lot because the surface of the wood pallet wood boards are very rough.
Okay, and then is it a problem if I have used PVC pipes as a frame to hang bird netting? How far from the plant should these pots be? We use PVC pipe all the time for hoop house construction and for all kinds of, greenhouse type of simple, cheap greenhouse type of framework. We're not talking about very much in terms of contact with the soil or the plants. I don't see that ever being a health issue or a problem, to be honest with you.
And also, I think the different birds, they have different preferences, how far they want to be from the food sources. If they are close, other birds might be coming all the time, and they bother them when they are around. So I think that's
I think this is more of putting bird netting up to keep the birds away from their vegetables and stuff like that. So.
Okay.
But again, you've got very little surface. There's very little contact with the PVC and the soil, and so it's so minimal. Like I say, we use PVC pipe all the time for various production methods, especially in vegetable crops, and I don't know that that's ever been an issue or at all.
Yeah, the PVC is when it's under heat, it leaches a lot more poison out into the environment. And the reason that PVC is so much more accessible is because PVC it's much more cheaper than number 2 and the number 5 plastics.
Okay.
Oh, you're welcome, Debbie. Thank you.
Any other questions? Did you want to, Ching, did you get a chance? I wasn't paying attention. Did you throw up that last slide?
Oh yeah.
It has the reference information real quick so
yes.
People can see that and jot that down, I guess, if they'd like to.
Yes.
If you can see it. It's kind of small on my screen.
All right, I'll make it full screen. And if the recording is shared later, they can always come back to the recording.
Right. Yeah, it's going to be recorded in 2 different places. So, all right. Anything?
Yeah, if you have questions, you are very welcome to send it our way. Either send it through your county educator, send it through David, or directly to me. Here's my email address right there. And thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks so much, Ching. I really appreciate it. I think this was a great topic, and I hope everybody enjoyed it and learned something new. Because these are common questions or common things that we get asked about in terms of materials, especially for raised beds or containers. So awesome, good job.
Absolutely. And if you guys have one of the topics in mind, you need me to go into depth as a focused presentation, just let me know and I'll be happy to do more.
All right. Thanks, everybody. I have another meeting that starts in about 3 or 4 minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and close the meeting, and we'll see you all next week.
All right. Well, thank you, David.
Yep. Thank you.
Have a great rest of the day.
Thanks. You too.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.